Here at Schedule for Launch, designing games kind of a huge deal. This week, join me, Zach Walsh, as I welcome back Weston, also known as Marigold, and welcome on Vivien for the first time. In this episode, we talk about a game jam that all three of us would love to see you in. We discuss design, managing expectations, working under a timeline, and goblins. Welcome to Schedule for Launch, a podcast to discover the projects that you may have missed. This week, I am incredibly excited to be talking to two phenomenal creators and people who I think are going to be really helping out the game designers that are looking to get started here. One of them returning. Thank you for joining me, Vivien and Weston. Weston, oh my gosh, I fumbled your name again. That's 2 episodes I've done that. Welcome back, though. How have you been?
Good. I've been doing, pretty well. Yeah, it's good to be back. Thanks for having us. Excited to get into
it. And thank you for joining us, Vivien. I know this is like a wild setup for me because we're in 3 different time zones right now.
Yeah, party. British summertime. It's the night here.
Yeah, it's we're starting to hit evening for me, but we're doing good, so we got time. So before we really hop into what we're going to be chatting about tonight, and everybody who's listening to this can actually see the title already, can I please get you both to tell us a little bit about yourselves?
I can begin, I suppose. I'm Vivien. I'm a game designer. I live in the northwest of England. Currently got 3 games out of my itch, which is genderphage.itch.io, like a little guy who eats gender. I've Fools on a Journey, 13 Crossroads, and Hark the Beast, all of which are GM-less storytelling games because I listen to a lot of Friends at the Table and play a lot of games in Roll Plus Bond.
Yeah, that's fair.
I've got got those out. I do a bit of this, a bit of that. I'm currently working on a much bigger game, which I'm very excited, and we've run some playtests for, which is a hack of Heart, the City Beneath by Grant Howard. A Resistance system game, but it's all still very much early days, so we'll see how that goes.
It's very cool.
You'll have to keep me in touch for that because I'm super into the idea. Yeah,
yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, what happens if you take Heart and you slam it headfirst into good society? Is the sort of elevator pitch.
Okay.
Yes.
That's rad.
Yep. It's all of both. Hi. I'm Weston or Marigold. Both of those are my name. And you can find me at braverun.itch.io. I've got 3 games up there that I wrote by myself, and one that I wrote with a good friend, Cameron. They are also all GM-less games.
Yeah.
For similar reasons. I've ran 2 game jams before. This is the 3rd, and the first one that I've done with someone else, which is exciting and fun. But that is basically me, I guess. I make a lot of stuff and it's just constantly kind of coming out. So I should probably start a newsletter at some point because people have no idea what I'm doing. But I made a shirt and 25 people bought it, and now it's not available anymore. You know, that kind of stuff.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. That's what. Yeah, I should find a way to. I post about it on Twitter, but that's about it. So
it's so busy.
The algorithm isn't very friendly, so it's outside links. So I need to figure out a different solution.
Longtime listeners of Schedule for Launch will be familiar with Weston's name because you come up a lot, actually. A lot of people who've been on this show.
Oh.
And I started making games because of a game jam Weston ran.
Oh, yeah. My first published game is because of a game jam Weston ran, too.
And
yeah,
actually, we're here to talk about and promote that game jam that's going to be happening in about 5 days from the original release of this episode. It's going to be going live on May 1st, right? May 1st?
Yeah. Yes.
Perfect.
Midnight.
Okay.
To me, I guess.
Witching out.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to be talking about, to me it was pitched as Mud, Gunk, and Dirt, a Goblin game jam.
Yeah.
What is this?
The full title, which is very important, is Slurpy Steve and the Grinky Girls present Mud and Gunk and Dirt. Because we were just wondering, it is crucial that this is not just a jam about goblins. It is for goblins, it is by goblins. It's just the vibe. We're like, what would they call it? And it was like, Slurpy Steve and the Grinky Girls present Mud and Gunk and Dirt. It just makes sense, really. You know, just kind of obvious.
And a lot of our initial inspiration for doing this thing came from musically inspired little comics or even a meme. One was a meme. We were just like, we've been talking about goblins a lot. Maybe we should just do a jam. That's kind of how that went.
Yeah, there was one goblin, and there was another goblin, and then suddenly goblins were here, and then Julia Fox happened, and so it's like, goblins are in the air right now.
Very, yeah. Got a goblin moon and
a goblin moon, very important.
So this is going to be a game jam, which I know a lot of people who are listening to this will be familiar about, and the theme is obviously it's Goblin Game Jam. But for those who aren't really familiar with what a game jam is, could you give us a little description on what it is and how they work?
So a game jam, the way I've ran them and the way we're approaching this one too is it's very simple. The idea is we have a prompt and a certain amount of time, and you write a game for the prompt and you don't be a jerk about it. You try to leave out all your bigotry and racism. Address that internally, please, and don't put it in your game. So we've got 3 rules. Do you want to read those, Vivien? You wrote them.
They're really important. Number 1, be nasty. Be nasty as hell. Number 2, don't be an asshole. 3, make something with/for goblins. Then in the small text, this can include other nasty little guys, such as imps, grinks, kobolds, gremlins, metaphorical goblins, and so on. So, but generally it's very vague. Historical goblins, game jams can involve stuff like judging and people ranking the games and being like, this one was good, which comes from the more sort of video game development thing. But this is just for tabletop games, it's a lot more loose, and if someone writes an entire 200-page rule book and someone else does the like 1 page, whatever. It's always a lot more like variable.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like, it's basically just have a fun time and don't be a dick about it. Which is just a good general rule for life.
Yeah, and it's a good excuse for people to make games, you know? Like, a lot of times, I mean, people might be thinking, like, oh, I'd like to make a game, but, like, what about? Or, I'll get to it eventually, you know, kind of a thing. And this is just, like, a little bit of pressure, just a little bit of direction to, you know, creates a small amount of urgency to actually make something and submit it.
Yeah.
For those of us who thrive under a deadline.
Yeah. You know, sad but true, I am one of those people. I haven't written a game in so long, and then I was sitting down to just try to think of, like, a pitch for a game, just you know, an outline, just an idea, in case it came up during this podcast. And I ended up writing a lot. So I've got 6 pages so far, and it's the whole, like, bones of the thing. So it turns out I needed another little game jam to start writing again, I guess.
That's sweet. So here's a quick question too, because I know some people are going to be wondering about this as well. You two are going to be moderating this. Are you also writing and submitting?
Yes. Yes to both. Moderation is a strong word for what we'll be doing.
I should see setting this up, giving it some structure.
Yeah, I mean, if we notice stuff that's, like, gross, we'll address it, but I don't actually expect that to happen. And then if people want to participate in, like, the community section, there's, like, a little forum part for game jams. They can do that, and I guess that's where moderation might come in, but honestly, it's just going to be, like, answering questions, like, so can I submit this? Yeah. Can I submit a game I already wrote? Yeah, it's fine. Is it if it's about goblins or for goblins, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a role-playing game about finding worms and naming them or something. And, like, that'd be fine.
It's something that you stressed the last time you were on Weston was that when you run a game jam, you don't put as much pressure on how things are written / submitted for the game jams. So I'm guessing that's something that's following into this one, where it's kind of like, hey, keep going with what you're working with, and, like, you can still submit something you're already doing.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, even something you've submitted to another jam you can submit here. I mean, like, and that's fine. The primary purpose for making these is to help give people an easy prompt to start making something. But if you have a game that you're like, oh, this fits this perfectly and I want to submit it, like, we're not going to be mad about that.
Here's another thing, and Vivien, you were telling me a little bit about this before we actually started. Can you two tell me the story of how this all kind of actually, like, the speed that this was set up and how decisive everything was?
Yeah, go ahead, Vivien. Yeah,
Because I heard a little bit about this. I thought it was very good.
So this was from, it's currently the 14th of April. The semester is on the 8th of April, i.e. 6 days ago. Discussions were being had about games that we were all writing, about involving thoughts about, like, goblins, goblin moons, ghosts, assorted ghost jams that happened, which is, you know, one of the previous ones that Mary ran. And I have actually been like, can't believe I don't have a goblin game, ... Goblin jam, anyone? Response from our friend Emily, who has been on the show. Goblin jam, goblin game. And then Weston sort of replies, oh wow, I would totally run a goblin jam if we want one. I reply, I've never run one down, I'd be down to co-run. heck yeah, let's do it. 24 hours later, it's a thing. We've made most of it work. You have been messaged. The jam has begun.
Yeah,
You know,
I was
you
going to
don't-
say,
need a lot to do a game jam, really.
my message to talk about this jam came at 2:26 p.m. I was at work when I got a message from Weston. And I was like, oh, I'll get to that in a second. I didn't realize that this was like, I got this message while the game jam was being discussed.
Oh, yeah. That's kind of how I do things. Just
You
all
gotta
at
be
once.
speedy. You gotta make it happen.
Yeah. Once I want to do a thing and I'm excited about it, I just keep doing it until it's done. So, yeah. And then I had some people in our Discord just give me a name and 3 adjectives for a goblin. And then I took those and I drew the goblins you can see on the on the jam page.
They're so cute.
And in the banner right there, you can see Slurpy Steve if you're curious.
Yep. He's a bit of a creep, but I love him.
The Grinking girls remain unperceived, as they always were.
Yeah.
So, something too that I know a lot of new designers are going to be a little bit stressed out about is the idea of writing something new for the first time under a time crunch. What is some advice you can give to people that are coming into this jam specifically? Because I know a lot of other jams are, I don't want to use the word nasty because you use that as like a fun and positive thing, but they kind of suck to people who haven't done a game jam before about
More competitive.
being competitive and under the time crunch. So what can you tell us about designing a game in that span? What advice can you give?
I think it's really just sort of covered by what Weston was saying earlier, in that this is basically an excuse for everyone to just sort of like chat together about it. You know, it's not, it doesn't have to be very big. Like, you know, a lot of one-pagers are a beautiful thing. There's a reason there's a bunch of Grant Howitt one-pagers in our like little inspiration list. And which is like, a lot of it is about, and you know, one of the sort of big emphasis on the game jam is that like, you want to make something that is a game, like is a like working thing, but is sort of that sort of, like, yeah, the sort of time pressure is sort of there as a sort of a helpful thing. It's not like, oh, we need to have this perfectly like play-tested thing done as this. It's just really like, hey, you should do this. Come check it out. We're gonna try and do it in May. And also, like, if you don't finish it by the end of May, and then you finish it after, you've still written a game, which is sort of what the point is.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can still sort of upload it. And it's very much like, yeah, it's just sort of creating that little community that sort of, if someone was wanting to write something for the first time, someone want to have a go at writing something, just have an excuse to, effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and there's even at least one person who's been on your podcast who wrote a game for a jam that I ran, submitted it way before it was done, then like unpublished it from their site so that when they did publish it, it would show up as being part of the jam, and that's fine. Like, that's a totally fine thing to do. If you're like, I have an idea, but it's not polished enough, or like I have the concept, and if I'm not making it for this jam, I know I won't finish it. You can submit it, you know, and then just make the unpublish the page, which is a thing you can do. It's just a checkbox, and then people can't actually find it or look at it. But when you do finish submitting it, when you make it live again, it'll be connected to the jam. So that's totally fine. Just if we don't know you personally, just let us know maybe, or we might check in with you to see what you're doing.
No, it's totally fair. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, I haven't had. Well, I'll say in the first game jam I ran, the Ghost to Ghost, the Ghost game jam.
yeah.
It was kind of a. It was the first one, and it was generated from the Roll Plus Bond Discord. Most of the community just lived in that Discord, so it was a I guess it was a private game jam. I can't remember what the actual term is for it, but it was unlisted, I guess is the term.
Oh, okay.
So like people couldn't just like find it on itch, so it was pretty much just our community doing that one. And then the second one I was more open. Was completely open. It was just small, you know. But I had lots of people I didn't know submitting, which was a lot of fun. So the biggest challenge is actually creating like discussion, but I guess it's important if people need it or want it, but it's not a requirement to engage with other people for the jam. Like if you don't want to talk to people, you don't have to. But you can ask questions, and we will answer them for sure if you need clarification. In my second game jam, I wasn't clear that it was for tabletop role playing games, so we got a few video games in there, and so there's some sad video games if you want to go check out Once Upon a Blue Monday, a sad game jam. They are sad. Turns out. So it'll be interesting with this one. I think we'll be putting a little bit more energy into creating a place where people can engage and bounce ideas off each other if they want to. But again, it's not a requirement. If you've never posted anything anywhere, you can still submit a game.
Yeah, it's sort of the nice thing about itch in terms of size is that it's sort of big enough that you do get plenty of people about, but it's sort of not too big and that there aren't like a billion game jams happening at once. And so it's the sort of thing which this is also something I found some of the latest game that I released, is that like a lot of my sort of incoming like traffic was coming from like people coming from the like recently published games list, which isn't like constantly spinning around. And so I think a lot of people do just sort of like stumble across it, and like there's the thing in which like with a game jam it's like, well, this is sort of a thing, like a space for people to have fun, and it's like there's an extent to which we'll be like quote unquote promoting it on like Twitter and things, and like posting it in assorted other places. But yeah, it's just sort of like we've sort of started off, we've sort of written up, we've got this like art that like we want people to have. Was sort of, it's effectively like creating that initial vibe is sort of been the main work of setting this down already. And then we have our sort of little list of inspiration, which is the sort of the Pockets comics. It's like this amazing comic artist on Twitter who I've been obsessed with for ages. And then I'm just sort of been like, oh, here's some thoughts. Like, here's some other games that have goblins. Yeah. Here's the thing. And I also forget that, like, D&D has goblins. And so part of me is like, are we going to get D&D stuff? But I was like, no, surely not. People don't play D&D. Or at least, I don't know, we'll see. But I think, like, it's sort of just being open to it, and if like people are asking questions and like being nice to them, and like
yeah,
it's my first one. I don't know how this works, but
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, it's just sort of making something that looks kind of fun, being intentionally very like open and being like, "Hi, yeah, come hang out, ask a question, read this little comic,
Yeah.
about some horrible little imps."
They are pretty nasty.
Something that I also very much appreciated about the Game Jam page is the direct call out to be mindful. I know that to some, I'm trying to word that, the Harry Potter goblins are bad. I'm there.
Yeah.
They're not good. They're a very bad representation. And being mindful to not make those kinds of anti-Semitic caricatures. So just being mindful. I'm really glad that that was placed right on the page just to keep it in people's heads, because I think that when I think of goblins, maybe it's because I've played a lot of games with really chaotic goblins. I think of these mischievous little things, and then there's the other side of people are like, oh, they're money thieves with a certain look. So
Right.
I'm really glad we're getting a bit of a lean into on the grubby little monsters who are going to cover your car in dirt or something. I don't know.
Right.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Yeah, to be honest, I came up with that when I was going through that little the inspiration list, in which I was looking through all the Magic the Gathering cards about goblins, and I was just sort of noticing the sort of amount of like hooked noses that show up in the art there, and I was like, oh yeah, that's sort of a thing. And yeah, it was sort of another reason the goblins have been in the thing was because of the Harry Potter game that was announced that has the like, oh, goblins stealing wizarding children. And I think it's just something that we've seen a bit more discussion of lately in sort of like anti-Semitic roots within like a lot of like fantasy tropes. Like, I know there's the whole sort of thing about I can't remember the details of it, but it was like the idea of a lich and a phylactery being a like little, but you know, very similar to the Jewish, I can't remember the name for it, but the thingy. But I was something that's been on my mind a bit and just sort of came out when I was doing that, and I was like, maybe we should just include something saying this, because it's like, again, I think like people don't think about it is the thing.
Yeah.
And you know, and it's also not saying that like, oh, if you're anti-Semitic, don't be anti-Semitic here. It's sort of assuming that people aren't, and then being like, this is something that can be lent into. And like, you know, with J.K. Rowling being kind of a shitty person who has like has always had shit politics. Like before even she started thinking about, you know, the transsexual. You know, and it's like there's the big like Sean YouTube video that was like 2 hours long. It's a bit like, if you look at the books, you can see that it's like awful, like centrist, right-leaning liberal from the start, and it like has all this anti-Semitism and like all the slaves should want to be slaves actually, and you shouldn't actually bother them about being slaves. But yeah, and it's just goblins are cool actually, but just
goblins
like,
are great.
You know, have a thought, be aware.
Yeah. I'm gonna self-call an old episode because we talked a lot about this. There was an episode with a creator named Lilith, who is a Jewish creator. We had a very great discussion on some of those fantasy tropes and things like golems and goblins, and really, so if you want to learn about that stuff, look up Blue JH on Twitter or anywhere. She'll answer like all your questions, especially about like those kinds of Jewish lore stuff. I learned so much from her in such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the big things too with these things is that this is an invitational that's this episode especially too is really aiming to get some people in who want to make a game and it's their first time. So obviously go out there and write the game, but what are some tips that you both can give people to kind of get started in their writing?
Yeah. The biggest tips I have is, well, first of all, an easy way in is to write a hack of a game you already like. Like, for instance, it would be really easy, maybe not really easy, but like easy to imagine somebody making a honey heist hack for this, or similarly a lasers and feelings, or a little good society mod, something like that. Just taking something that you're familiar with and kind of putting a new theme, a new lens on it, maybe adding a new mechanic or two, and just doing that. And then if you aren't already part of a community that you can bounce ideas off of, we want to be that during this jam especially. So if you have questions, or if you want to post your progress, or if you're having trouble with a specific mechanic or idea, you can post that kind of stuff, and we will at least engage with you, and there's a good chance other people will too.
Yeah, I was also going to say, starting with a hack is something that's one of the easiest ways to get started. I would say that generally, just be concise is often a really useful thing. You sort of can, if you have sort of one big idea, you'll be like, oh, well, what is the thing that I like about goblins? Or you sort of go through this whole thing of goblins, and you're like, well, this one has a tie and a little briefcase. And it's like, what would it be like if goblins did business? And it was like, what's the sort of business here? Let's think, I want to do something about goblins and contracts. And you're like, maybe, often you can have two concepts, and it's just how does the interaction between them works? And this is more of a sort of general game design thing, but it's generally if you're coming up with something new, either have a new mechanic in which we're just okay, I've got this mechanic idea, I want to do this. For that, it can be think about, why that mechanic is useful for the sort of story you want to tell. If you think about something like a Hack of the Quiet Year, that's very much telling a story through a sort of variety of questions that maybe come in a certain order. If it's something like a For the Queen hack, it's something that's very much about getting in through connections and relationships, and think about if it's about relationships, it's might be able to do something For the Queen. If it's about sort of a place, that can be a sort of this sort of hack. But generally keep it small, and just have a simple concept, and then think about the best way that the mechanics can help tell the story of that concept. And also just do what you're used to as well. If there's sort of some type of sort of game that you sort of enjoy playing, generally sort of writing into that, writing a space for a game that doesn't, if you're oh, I like this sort of story, and it's just write a game that's very specifically built for that very specific thing. My most recent game that released, this Hark the Beast, is based off of a specific episode of Mobile Suit Gundam, in which I was
Ooh.
That's really cool. And I was just what if I wrote a game that basically just tells the story of that one episode? Which, it's one in which it sort of focuses a bit more on some people who are trying to stop a sort of giant incoming super weapon. And it was well, what sort of mechanics work for that? What do I want to do that? What do I want to focus on? I want to focus on the relationships. Therefore, I'm going to have more rules about relationships. And sort of, I want it to be a tragic story. I want it basically to be impossible to win. And so I was okay, I'll set up a dice system that basically gets harder as things go on. And it's just that maybe sounds like a lot of stuff, but it can just come down to you sort of have a concept and a mechanic, and it's like making the mechanic and the concept sort of work sort of nicely together is sort of just what game design is, especially for like a little, if you're writing like a little fairly small game like this.
Yeah, avoid writing a fantasy heartbreak for a game jam.
One other piece of advice is to confront your urge to edit while you write. And that's just general writing advice, really, but I find it super duper useful to just like basically have a conversation with myself on the page about what I'm thinking about or what I'm writing. Like for the game I started working on for this jam, I just listed the attributes I wanted this game to have, and some of them didn't end up sticking around, or won't end up sticking around, but I knew I wanted some kind of weird mechanic, so I just like listed like, am I going to use like a D100? Am I going to use like some kind of spinner? Am I going to use, and then like being like, well, I don't want to use too many dice tables because I've been using a lot of dice tables lately, and just like typing all that stuff out and then just like continuing to move on. And then it just starts to take shape. I mean, that's what works for me, but I think what will always work or what can always hang someone up is if you keep trying to like rehash one point before you move on to the next point, if you want one piece to work perfectly before you do the next thing, because just with like writing a story, you might end up cutting that bit that you spent 3 hours on. If you had just gotten 15 minutes or 500 words later, you would have realized that scene didn't make any sense, or that mechanic didn't make any sense, or whatever, and it wasn't how you wanted to approach the game. So I like to just like messily get everything out and then start refining it into something that somebody else could read.
So we're actually starting to run low on time. We've been going for a little bit now. And we've had that advice section. Since this is such a different episode and people are going to be working under a bit of a time crunch for this, what do you two do to help keep yourselves on track while working on a project that has a deadline?
My first step is to become obsessed with it. It helps a lot. And then, I mean, really, it's that. I mean, that's true. I made a joke, but it's also real. That's how
100%.
Once an idea latches on, I just like keep pushing it. But the other thing that makes that possible and helps me stay in that is sharing my progress. Like I shared the name of it with Vivien and my good friend Cameron, who I wrote another game with, and them being excited about just the silly name I'm giving the game, and then the general just like kind of bad elevator pitch I had so far helps me be more excited about the game myself. Where if I didn't have anybody to share that with, then I would just be like, I don't know, maybe this is fine. So I guess like share with people, whether that's us or, if you know other people who like games, you can share with them the progress that you're making, or like, hey, I came up with this thing where I don't know, it's a Goblin food fight game, and I just figured out what happens if you find a watermelon and can throw a whole watermelon at somebody else. Something like that, and like, they'll be like, what happens? And they will be excited to, find people who want to engage with you about your game. And the nice thing is with this game jam is that's built in. So we're here. You don't have to go searching if you don't already know people. We're right there.
Yeah.
I think that's so good. Good advice. Yeah, I would say that definitely like not over editing is a big thing. Just try and get something that looks like a sort of first draft. Sort of have like have something in which you're like have an idea of like how a complete game would work, and like don't edit it, and you'll be like have something start to finish and be like, okay, I know the setup, you do this. I know to like play the game, you do this 4 times or whatever, and then at the end you do this, and you sort of have that, and then yeah, that can sort of, and also don't be afraid to jump around if you have an idea of a good ending mechanic. Write that first. I have very like scattershot approach to these things. I think just like sharing stuff and being like, and also if what am I saying? I don't know. If you just get stuff done bit by bit, like write whatever you can, get a first draft quickly, edit it a bit. For a game jam, you can sort of do like self-play tests for a lot of sort of games, and just like, okay, well, test like a little bit. Don't run a full game, run like a section of it, and be like, okay, this works. And then as long as you're, it doesn't need to be perfectly mechanically tweaked for a game jam, especially as long as it's sort of playable. It's pretty good. And then don't get overly. Oh, that's a good one. Don't get overly bogged down in stuff like layout too early on. Also again, it's for a game jam, people know that you're sort of doing it a limited time span, like it doesn't need to look beautiful. I think like the ultimate thing is that like it's creating the game, it's thinking about like design and like mechanics, and obviously like layout and stuff is very important, and like is a thing is part of design, is like how you present that information to the reader / the player / whatever. But for something like this, like it's the point of the game jam is sort of like, don't think about that other stuff too much. Just sort of focus on the sort of bits that need doing in order for it to be a game.
Yeah.
And so which is, I hate that I'm using terminology that I use at work at times, but like I think the idea of like a minimum viable product from which project management, but like the sort of minimal, the thing with like the absolute least amount of stuff in it that can be like considered like a working thing is often like a really nice thing to be thinking after, and being like, oh, I want this, but like if I didn't have it, it would still kind of work, so maybe I can not think about doing that.
Yeah. I mean, if you just have a Google Doc, you export it to a PDF, and you just like left one of the pages with just the title on it or something, like that's great. Like that's fine. You can submit that. You don't have to write it in Google Docs, but that's it's easy.
What most of us do. And we have the art in the community tab as well, that has been beautifully drawn and made available to you for use. So if you just want to stick one of those in there, have a funny little guy.
Yeah.
Then there you go.
Slap one of them on your cover. That's great. Yeah. You can't have Slurpy Steve, but the rest of them are good.
Weston has claimed Slurpy Steve. Nobody else can have him. Vivien's dibbed the Grinky girls, so that's why they aren't present. Weston, Vivien, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find out more about both of you, your work, and sign up to join Slurpy Steve and the Grinky Girls present Mud and Gunk and Dirt, a tabletop jam by Goblins for Goblins? It's a mouthful, but it's fun to say.
Yeah. Yeah, on the internet, on Instagram and Twitter as braverun__, and on itch at braverun.itch.io. The game jam that we've been talking about today is at itch.io/jam/mud-gunk-dirt. Yeah.
It's a winning combo. I'm Vivien. I'm also been known to be on the internet from time to time. You can follow me on Twitter at ocean1212_W. My itch is genderphage, genderperphage.itch.io. And yeah, well, you can get both of our itches from the Game Jam page itself. We'll be posting it around Twitter and the like when it appears, which it will be once this episode is released. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Come and play in the dirt, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am really excited about this. I would love to see some people who have been background listeners in the community come out and make stuff, and maybe even eventually bring them onto the show to talk about these things. I'm really excited to see. Yeah, it would be rad. It would be so cool. I'm really excited to see the stuff that comes out of this. Like, so excited. And if you're already part of Roll Plus Bond and you're listening to this, you know these two very well. And if not, and you are a Friends at the Table fan, go join Roll Plus Bond. I don't talk a lot in there, but I really like it. Y'all are so sweet. Y'all are so good.
So Zach, quick question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What are the chances that you'll submit a game to this little old jam?
Actually, pretty good. I'm gonna try and write something. I'm genuinely
Heck
Yeah.
You could do a self-interview.
Oh, that'd be so fucking weird.
So Zach, tell us a little bit about yourself.
You just gotta pitch your voice like up an octave with like a vocoder. It would be great.
Well, all those voice acting lessons are coming to fruition.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm so excited. As always, audience, all of the links that we talked about just a moment ago, like maybe 2-3 minutes ago, those are going to be in the description down below. Join this game jam and let's have some fun. Go play in the dirt. Weston's already launched some stuff. Vivien's already launched some stuff. And if you're listening to this on release, Slurpy Steve is about to launch with the Grinky Girls. So go join the game jam. Take care of yourselves. Have a good night, and we'll see you real soon. Bye.
Goodbye.
See ya.
Thank you so much to Weston and Vivien for coming onto the show this week to talk about Slurpy Steve and the Grinky Girls present Mud and Gunk and Dirt, a Goblin game jam. I know it's a bit of a weirder episode for some of you, but honestly, we'd love to see you join this game jam and talk with you about it. I have been hard at work getting myself started and trying to figure out what I'm going to be doing with mine. Let's just say it involves some documentary stuff. White Wilderness from Disney. If you know what that is, you can kind of guess what might happen. But honestly, there's some amazing creators out there in this community, and I would love to see those of you who haven't given design a shot joining them. The Game Jam officially starts on May 1st, but you can pre-sign up using the link below to the Itch Game Jam page. I'll also be posting about it on release on Twitter. Please spread the word where you can. If you like this episode and want to hear more, let us know somewhere on the internet. Word of mouth is the best way for us to grow. Also, it's the best way to get more people involved in creating some truly amazing games. So, get out there, share this, talk about it. It's going to be silly, it's going to be fun. Come join us in the dirt. Until then, take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye.